South Australia's economy is in a process of transformation with a shift to new and high-tech industries. That's why in March 2015, the state government established the Nuclear Fuel Cycle Royal Commission to consider the potential for the state to increase its participation in nuclear activities. The Commission found that South Australia could safely increase its participation and that the greatest opportunity was the storage and disposal of used nuclear fuel from overseas countries. When Premier Jay Weatherill released the Commission's report in May 2016, he announced that it would become the starting point of a community conversation about whether South Australia could become more involved in nuclear activities.
We wanted to involve all South Australians in exploring the practical, financial and ethical questions associated with deepening our involvement in the nuclear fuel cycle.
The Premier's announcement heralded the start of what would become the state's largest community consultation program. It was led by the government's Nuclear Fuel Cycle Royal Commission Consultation and Response Agency, or CARA, and overseen by an independent advisory board, chaired by the Honourable John Mansfield, a former Justice of the Federal Court of Australia. The consultation had three main purposes: to promote community awareness of the Commission's report, to assist the community's understanding of the report's findings, and to seek the community's feedback on what the government would need to consider in its response to the Commission's report. There were three phases in the consultation program. It opened with a citizens' jury in June and July, followed by a 4-month statewide consultation program between July and October, and then a second citizens' jury during October and November, this time involving more than 300 South Australians. In response to 25,000 invitations sent to random addresses, a group of 52 South Australians were chosen to join the first citizens' jury. It was held over 2 weekends in June and July, with jurors asked to identify what are the parts of the Royal Commission's report that everyone needs to discuss.
A citizens' jury is essentially the exact opposite of an opinion poll. As a research foundation interested in improving trust in public decision making, we want to move from public opinion to public judgment. And really that's going to come from, in the nicest possible way, we don't care what you think in the next 2 minutes, but if you take the chance to read and consider, then you might come up with an informed consensus view.
After exploring the Commission's findings and hearing from more than 30 expert witnesses, the jury focused on the recommendation that the state could store and dispose of used fuel and intermediate level waste. They found this should be the basis for community discussion.
Very important thing we're learning today is the democracy, how democracy is working and how we're getting all different opinion and trying to inform the public, the wider community, what is it all about, what is this Royal Commission report about and what's the nuclear cycle.
I think that this is just a very good start and I think it needs a lot more community consultation after this.
I think we're all still grappling with the complexity of the issue and the undertaking of reducing it to sort of a coffee table manual.
They also identified 4 key themes to guide people's discussion: safety, informed community consent, trust, accountability and transparency, and the economic benefits and risks to the state. The jury called on all South Australians to be part of the nuclear conversation.
Obviously this will now be published. I'll present this to the Parliament and we'll use this to guide the next steps that we take.
The next phase was the statewide consultation, which ran from July to October. Over 4 months, tens of thousands of South Australians joined this important conversation about the state's future. More than 130 information days and events were held right across the state in metropolitan, regional and remote communities. Each information session involved a team from CARA setting up an all-day drop-in centre where people could come at their leisure, find information, ask questions and talk with team members.
We've gone to a lot of trouble to recreate what's actually being proposed here. So we've got a series of models, we've got lots of graphs and diagrams and pictures, copies of the Royal Commission report, to try and help people understand what it is we're talking about.
The consultation team were accompanied by technical organisations including the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation, the CSIRO and the Environmental Protection Authority. This is so the community had the opportunity to understand and discuss the Royal Commission report. The events were promoted through a number of channels, including local media, an interactive map on the No Nuclear website, social media and community advertising to ensure everyone was aware and had the opportunity to get involved. In addition, there were many other ways for South Australians to learn about these issues and provide their feedback, such as the website, including a series of fact sheets, free call number, online discussion boards, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube.
I want to know what's going on. This is my country. I've been brought up here and I just want to know what's going on in the country.
It's a very good presentation which is going around the state. I think it's ideal because it's an opportunity, I think, for the state.
There were two streams of feedback received through the consultation program. One being self-selected, where people chose to participate through an event or online, and the other being representative, where a cohort of people were randomly selected to participate in phone surveys and focus groups as representatives of the South Australian population. The consultation program was designed to ensure that people from all backgrounds had the opportunity to get involved.
I think these sessions have benefited the community quite a lot if people bothered to take the time to come, because there's a lot of information here that I certainly didn't know about, and I think probably a lot of other people wouldn't know either.
The Aboriginal Engagement Program was designed with Aboriginal leaders to ensure that all activities were culturally appropriate and sensitive to the community's needs. 31 Aboriginal communities and several towns with a high proportion of Aboriginal residents were visited during the statewide consultation program. Translation services were used where appropriate, and information and feedback materials were translated, including digital stories voiced in Anangu. In addition, a 2-day forum was held with members of the Aboriginal Human Services sector, bringing together 20 Aboriginal community leaders to discuss the risks and benefits of pursuing the opportunity to store and dispose of waste from other countries.
There's a lot of energy in the room, a lot of discussion, and a lot of people are contributing to the points, and they're feeling that they feel that the points are aimed for them. And so I think they're going to be interested in what the final look of the book's going to be, what that's going to go to the citizen jury number 2.
Other key elements of the consultation program included a student forum in August where more than 160 students came from around the state to discuss the Commission's report and hear from experts and present their views to the Premier. An industry event was also held in October where about 200 businesses, academic and research leaders discussed the risks and opportunities involved in increasing the state's involvement in the nuclear fuel cycle.
As leaders in business, industry and academia, you're critical to ensuring the South Australian economy remains dynamic, innovative and flexible. We want you to help us lead the way into this high-tech future we imagine for the South Australian economy.
There should be a strategy for progressive investment and also the chance to learn lessons and to feed those lessons back into the next investment cycle.
The storage of nuclear fuel rods would be very good for South Australia. It's something which there's a global need for.
I want this debate to be decided on the evidence, and if people review the evidence and then still feel that it's too risky, I think that that is a perfectly valid position to take.
The second citizens jury involved more than 300 South Australians, including members of the first jury. Over 3 weekends in October and November, the jury deliberated on the question of under what circumstances, if any, could the state pursue the opportunity to store and dispose of nuclear waste from other countries.
We're here for a citizens jury today for one reason. When people offer feedback to government, they often think the answer's preordained, that the government's already made up its mind. And there's only one real way to earn trust and counteract that, but actually let 300 odd citizens go through every comment, verbatim, cut it any single way they want. And if they can take that and learn from it and ask questions over 6 days, if they can find some common ground, I think that's going to help bring trust to a very big public decision.
It's been very worthwhile. Learnt lots of new things, which has opened my mind to a lot of different perspectives.
It's all about talking to each other, processing all the information.
Jury members were required to consider the community's feedback from the consultation program, and they also heard from more than 100 witnesses and opinion leaders.
From the presentations that we've had and the people who are facilitating, I think we're quite confident that they know where we're going with this process, and certainly from Citizens Jury 1 members, they've told us to trust in the process as well.
It's been such a rewarding process so far. We've come out with some questions that we feel are valuable, and sessions that we feel are necessary for the next process.
The Citizens Jury report stated that the jury generally had a strong conviction in taking a position one way or another. 2/3 of the jury did not want to pursue the opportunity under any circumstances, and 1/3 supported a commitment to pursue the opportunity under the circumstances outlined in their report.
What I got out of it is a lot of information that I wouldn't have had otherwise, and that makes me feel more confident to talk to people about this particular issue.
I know this has been an absolutely gruelling and demanding civic service that you've offered on behalf of the rest of South Australia. So thank you so much for devoting your time and effort into what has been a very new experiment in democracy, and I think you should all be very proud of yourself and give yours a round of applause. Thank you.
In just over 4 months, CARA held more than 17,000 face-to-face conversations and received nearly 15,000 comments on Facebook, more than 14,000 posts on Twitter, and almost 4,000 website comments. More than 6,000 people had been asked their views through phone surveys, over 4,500 people had submitted their feedback in online and written surveys, and over 1,100 letters, emails and phone calls were received. A Community Views report was released in November 2016, summarising the views put forward by the community throughout the consultation program. And throughout the program, safety, trust, accountability and transparency of government were the topics which South Australians raised, considered and provided feedback on.
More than 50,000 South Australians have had their say as our nuclear response agency toured the state, speaking to people everywhere from the AP Wetlands to Mount Gambier and everywhere in between. And this process uncovered a diverse range of views within the community. For instance, a survey of more than 4,000 people conducted by the agency found that 43% of South Australians support pursuing the idea further, while 37% were opposed and the other undecided.
In November 2016, after careful consideration of all the community feedback, the South Australian Government released its response to the Nuclear Fuel Cycle Royal Commission. It decided to support 9 of the Commission's 12 recommendations, spanning exploration and mining, nuclear medicine, and collaboration on a comprehensive national energy policy. On recommendations relating to a nuclear waste storage facility, the Government considered a diverse range of community views and supported continued discussion and investigation of these opportunities for South Australia.
The State Government has decided that discussion should continue on a proposed nuclear waste facility. The Government has also concluded that the only path forward is through the restoration of bipartisanship and a broad social consent secured through a statewide referendum.
The Government supports continued public debate about South Australia's role in the nuclear fuel cycle, and it acknowledges that this is a matter the people should decide and not political parties.